Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Beth Lindop and I'm back in the hosting hot seat today as we reflect on Liverpool's 1-1 draw with Luton Town in the Premier League. Now, there might not have been many fireworks from Jurgen Klopp's side at Kenilworth Road, but I'm lucky enough to be joined by a stellar panel who will hopefully help bring some sparkle to today's pod. Paul Gorst, our LFC correspondent, how magical was your first trip to the Kenny?
Do you know what? I was expecting a typical kind of lower league ground where it's very tight, very compact, and the atmosphere is ferocious. And for a Premier League club, that's exactly what it was. And we're going to come on to some of the chants and stuff like that, but other than that, that's kind of the hostile atmosphere that they like to create. And it was an experience, shall I say. It reminded me a little bit of when Liverpool played Shrewsbury a few years back in the FA Cup. That type of environment. So yeah, just want to tick off, I guess, on my list of venues. But we're going to come on to the performance now, aren't we? And it wasn't good enough, to be honest. But yeah, that's we'll see if we're back there next season. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, I'm also joined by Keifer MacDonald. Now, Keifer, you said coming into the office yesterday you had a bit of a bad feeling. Are you a bit of a psychic when it comes to Premier League upsets?
I think just a pessimist, to be honest. I don't know why. I just had a bit of a bad feeling about yesterday, I suppose. I said to Gorst earlier, I'm not sure what I could attribute that to, but kind of paid off really, didn't it? That Liverpool didn't perform. So yeah, plenty to discuss, plenty of talking points. I'm sure we'll get to them shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Gorst, you were there for us, and it was a weird one, wasn't it? Really, because for 95 minutes it was such a frustrating performance, and the story of the match, I guess, was already written until sort of the 95th minute. Luis Diaz comes on and salvages an emotional late equaliser. But what did you make of it overall yesterday?
Yeah, it was. It just wasn't great, was it at all? We've waxed lyrical loads about Liverpool this season, about their ability to, look like they're kind of back to their old selves with a little bit of a new swagger and a new midfield. But this was a shocking kind of regression to the dark days of last season when the likes of Bournemouth and Brentford and Wolves and even Brighton to an extent were beating Liverpool quite comfortably away from home. Liverpool have got a bit of an issue now, I think, with teams who they should be beating on paper away from home. Last season, you're looking at it, they went to Fulham on the opening weekend, who'd just been promoted to 2-2 draw. They got beat at Bournemouth, and they got beat by Forest as well. So that's 1 point from 9 against newly promoted teams. Last season, they've now made it 2 points from 12. If you throw Luton into the mix, and that's a statistic that needs to change, really. If Liverpool have got serious hopes on doing something this season, they need to be winning these sorts of games. And, it massively impacted them last season, and it didn't get top 4 because of results like that. Mm-hmm. So, if Liverpool would have turned, even like 6 or 7 points instead of, that run that they actually did get, you could be looking at being in the Champions League this season. So it makes a massive difference, and they just weren't at it at all yesterday. Too many off the boil. Mo Salah was ineffective. So Bosley probably had his poorest game that I've seen him have as a Liverpool player. McAllister, again, some question marks over whether he is a long-term candidate for that number 6 role. Joe Gomez at left back didn't really work. Just all over the pitch. And Darwin Nunez's miss is just absolutely shocking, isn't it? We've spoken about him a lot on this pod. Kind of laughing off when, we should be scoring against Toulouse or Union Saint-Gilloise in the Europa League, and Liverpool are still winning. But when he's missing those sorts of chances and Liverpool aren't winning, that's when it becomes a big problem. Some suggestions that the offside flag was raised, that I thought it was actually the offside, the linesman putting it the goal kick. But he should have scored it nonetheless. But, I suppose the good news is Liverpool didn't lose.
Mm-hmm. Well, Gorst, touched on it there, Keifer, in terms of Liverpool's records against newly promoted sides, and obviously last season failed to beat any of those sides away from home. But it's actually October 2021, which was Liverpool's last win against a newly promoted side. That was Watford, the 5-0 dispatch of Watford. What's going on there? What do you think it is that makes them so poor against these sides that they should be beating?
I'm not sure, but I mean, if I had to kind of throw my kind of 50 pence in, I don't know if it's like the low block, and that's, we've seen that in, Klopp this year's reference that it's, year one of Liverpool. If you kind of go back to his early tenure in, 2015, 2016, they could compete against the big sides, the Cities, the Uniteds, but then it was kind of those, as we see, these kind of defeats like yesterday that were kind of their Achilles heel. And I'm not sure what it is, but you look at how Luton's goal come yesterday, and maybe Liverpool were committing too many men. I think they left one on the halfway line, and Elliot was on the edge of the box, and all of a sudden they clear the ball out, and it's a 3-on-1 at one point. So I'm not entirely sure. It's weird, isn't it? Because it feels like 2 points dropped, but in reality it should be viewed as a point gain yesterday, because it took until the 95th minute to produce something. And as Gorst says, if you've got aspirations of competing in the Champions League at the top end of the Premier League, you can't be viewing trips to Luton as a point gain. But that's the reality of what yesterday was. But I think whilst this year we've seen like really good sides of Liverpool, and maybe they've kind of exceeded expectations at times. You think of the win at Newcastle, and kind of how they dispatched teams like Villa with ease, and even Nottingham Forest last weekend. I think this was kind of a firm reminder, as Klopp kind of said all along, that this, don't get too carried away. There is still a long way to go in this journey until they are going to reach the heights of kind of their predecessors of 21, 22, and so on. But yeah, it was just deflating. It was kind of a momentum zapping, wasn't it? Because it felt like everyone has kind of had that date with City circled on the 25th of November, and it felt like if you go to there with the difference between the two sides being 1 point, then you almost got a free hit, because if you lose that and it's 4 points, it's like, well, it's not the end of the world. If you get a draw there, it's 1 point, it's not the end of the world. But all of a sudden you think, they've got, if they lose that, well, if they beat Brentford next week, it'll be the gap's still 3 points. So if they lose at City, it'll be 6. And then all of a sudden they've got United and Arsenal next month. So it just shows kind of how quickly things can change. On the flip side to that is, if they had won yesterday and they had won next week, they go into that game, as I say, City, bounced into it. I think, would have been 5 wins consecutively in the Premier League. So it's just a bitter pill to swallow, really, because, as I say, they've kind of done all the hard work this season at times with 10 men and kind of in the face of adversity. And then it was like, on paper, what should have been a straightforward task against newly promoted Luton, like, no disrespect to them, and they kind of fluffed their lines.
Yeah, I mean, Keifer sums it up perfectly there, Gorsty, but you are sort of loath to criticise this Liverpool team because there has been so much to like about them since the start of this season. But this is a problem, as we've mentioned, that dates back to sort of the early days of Jurgen Klopp's tenure, and even in the title-winning season back in 2020, they had that 3-0 defeat away to Watford, didn't they, who were sort of relegation fodder, and they managed to hand Liverpool their first Premier League defeat of the season. Do you think it can be levelled at Liverpool? Sometimes it's maybe a bit of an attitude issue, maybe it's a little bit of complacency sets in sometimes against these teams?
Yeah, certainly since the start of last season, definitely. It was something you could never really properly level at Liverpool. Normally, if they didn't get a result, wasn't really down to being an attitude thing. But you're looking at it now and you're thinking, well, maybe is it? Because particularly the Bournemouth game in March, they went there 6 days after beating Man United 7-0, and they got beat. Bournemouth I think they might have even been bottom of the league that afternoon. And you're looking at it, you're trying to explain reasons for why, and perhaps there is a little bit of an attitude issue, maybe. The likes of Andy Robertson was a massive miss yesterday. Those types of players ensure that the mentality and the preparation and all that kind of stuff is spot on. Liverpool have got enough leaders in there to make sure that it isn't a problem. But there's, maybe it was yesterday. I think they didn't really create too many chances, did they? I think if you're looking at it and the keeper's pulled off a load of worldies and whatever, and you think sometimes that can happen, but he wasn't overly worked, really, Kaminsky. The saves he made were saves you'd expect a Premier League goalkeeper to make. Nunez was a little bit unlucky when he hits the bar in the first half, and then obviously he should score. But other than that, there wasn't too much, was there? Jota had that one that he saved. Nunez had another couple that he's been quite comfortable for the keeper. So it was just one of those days where Liverpool were off key. I think I said on Friday, didn't I, that Liverpool's front 5 options mean that if you keep 3 of them quiet, the other 2 off the bench will come on and change the game or whatever. But that was probably as poor as a collective as I've seen for a long time. Only for Diaz popping up with the equaliser in the last minute with a header, or 95th minute. You'd be looking at a really embarrassing setback. So, fair play to Diaz for first declaring himself available and then coming off and rescuing his team. But other than that, there was just nothing really to take as a positive from yesterday. It was a really, really poor afternoon, and like Keifer says, now they've got to go into that Brentford game and get 3 points. I mean, they should be doing that anyway at home, but it just puts a little bit more pressure on it. And then, you know, if they don't get it, you're going into that international break and the picture looks a lot gloomier.
I mean, collectively, it was a really poor performance, wasn't it? And it's harsh to sort of lay the blame squarely on anybody's shoulders. I think Jota probably should have done better, actually, with that effort in the first half.
He has more time than he realises. He kind of scratches at it, doesn't he?
I think he maybe should have gone across the
I was surprised he didn't.
When he tried to catch him out, isn't he? There?
Yeah, and Mo Salah, of course, with that header that led to that Darwin Nunez miss, you know, undoubtedly was going for goal there, and he made a bit of a hash of it. So, you know, there wasn't one player culpable for it solely, but obviously Darwin Nunez will get most of the headlines for all the wrong reasons for that miss. I mean, you know, as Gorsty said earlier, well, after that Toulouse game, we all sort of said, you know, oh, well, it's not too bad because it didn't impact Liverpool too harshly. You know, they were already winning the game. It was in the Europa League. But I think I said on the pod that week, you know, if that miss comes against a side when it's 0-0 and it goes on to cost Liverpool, then actually it's not very funny. And so it proved yesterday. He's got to sort of cut those mistakes out of his game, hasn't he?
Absolutely, especially off the back of what he did at Bournemouth on Wednesday night. That kind of felt like it summed him up, and I know there was, you know, a bit of discourse about his touch and whatnot, whether it was a bad touch or whatever, but, you know, just kind of plucking that moment out of, you know, just the air and winning Liverpool the game like that was kind of what you want to see from Darwin Nunez on a regular basis. And I think the kind of assessment I've made of him is when he's got time to think and his kind of brain goes into overdrive is when he's at his worst, isn't he?
Bit like Didier Drogba in that respect. I always thought when he was instinctive, that was he was at his best, and Nunez seems a bit similar, really. Yeah,
and you know, there's a lot of comparison maybe with Suarez, and you could probably put him in that same bracket of just, you know, in half spaces and half seconds to win games. He can do that, but you know, if you think of what. I mean, he's not going to be an Erling Haaland, is he? But if he kind of wants, if Liverpool are going to want a number 9 to win in the Premier League and win in the Champions League, that's kind of the level that they got to be looking at. And I don't think anyone's doubting the attributes that he's got. He you know, if he gets other kind of the mental side, I think, of his game right, I think he could certainly, you know, one day be scoring 25, 30 goals in the Premier League on a regular basis. But it's just it's as you say, Beth, it's kind of cutting out all the nonsense that comes with it, because, you know, he's made such big progress this season. He's made such big steps on and off the field in terms of, you know, being able to communicate with his teammates. And I think, you know, Klopp has mentioned that, or you know, in I think last week as well, he said that, you know, no longer does he you know, to communicate with him was quite hard at the start. And now it's obviously not a smooth process, but a smoother process. And obviously now he's starting games for Liverpool on a regular basis. And I even thought yesterday the fact that he was deployed on the left, and I know Joe Gomez is like a more defensively stable option, but clearly Klopp is now trusting him in tracking back and following runners, and that's something that, you know, even as early as, I don't know, April time, Klopp kind of mentioned as a bit of a red flag of Nunez, that he wasn't maybe you know, robust in the process of pressing and counter pressing, and he said that was his ticket into the team. But it kind of feels like he's got that side of his game on the up, and it's just these kind of silly misses that, you know, will get clipped and shared and whatever, and it's not going to do him as a person any good, is it? So you just kind of hope that he can kind of eradicate them, because, as you say, it's all well and good doing it against Toulouse when, you know, he's already scored and, you know, he's already got the headlines in some capacity, but to do it, you know, on an afternoon like yesterday when Liverpool really needed someone to step up, you know, that's what people are going to kind of remember his performance as yesterday as. And I think just to go back to, as you were saying earlier, trends against you know, newly promoted sides, I think if you look at it from a Luton perspective, you know, I know they didn't have an abundance of chances, Liverpool, but the ones they did miss, they just grow in belief, don't they? I mean, even not necessarily the Jota one, but the Nunez one, I think he does all the right stuff to kind of control it on his knee and kind of get the shot away. But, you know, if he just had an extra touch or maybe a bit of delicacy about it, maybe lifted it over the goalkeeper. Obviously, it's easier said than done.
Just chip the keeper.
No, but do you know what I mean? Like,
I think to be fair, I think he'd done the hardest part.
That's what I mean, in controlling the ball.
He was moving onto it at some speed, and he took it well in the stride, and then he's hit it almost in one motion, and he's been unlucky with that one, I thought, but I know what you mean, yeah.
But and then even I always think back to the Forest game last year of how many chances they missed early doors, and then, you know, you referenced the Bournemouth defeat earlier this year. They missed a penalty, and teams like that who live for moments and they hang on. They'll have a game plan of right 20 minutes, keep it tight, don't give them anything. 45 to 60, keep it tight, give them nothing, and then you might look to grow into the game and they could counter attack and they could go on. That's exactly what Luton did yesterday. And, you know, if Liverpool put one of those, half chances, if you want to call them that, yesterday, whether it be Jota, Nunez, or even the glaring Nunez one in the second half. I don't think Luton come back. They probably think, look, we'll take a 1-0 here because we could have, on another day been beaten 3 or 4-0, and sides like that will be looking at goal difference as points come the end of the season. So it's fine margins like that which allow Lutons to kind of build on, and then ultimately it comes back and bite you when you don't take your chances.
Yeah, I'd be reluctant to be too critical of Nunez because he's having a really good season. But if he scores that yesterday, he scores the one against Toulouse, he scores the one against USG, he's on to 10 there for the season. And all of a sudden you're looking at it thinking, this fella is ready to really take flight. And I'm sure he'll brush it off and he'll go again, as he tends to do. And in fairness, he was the only one who was looking like making anything happen yesterday, particularly in the first half, from an attacking perspective. But if he just converts the ones he should, his goal tally, he'll just quietly rise, and then you're looking at it thinking, well, how many can this fella get? But he's got to start sticking those away, I think.
I mean, his goal contributions for the season, I had a look earlier, I think it's a goal and assist every 63 minutes, for Liverpool in all competitions, which is brilliant. And if you put that over 63 games or whatever it would be, you'd rack up with like 25 goals and 20 assists, which would be brilliant, and you'd expect that would deliver some big trophies for Liverpool. But as you say, it's the more, if he was missing all the hard chances and burying the easy ones, you'd be like, well, is he a bit of a limited striker? But it's the fact that he's doing all the hard work and kind of the easy ones where he should just get a knee on it or a shin on it or whatever. Yeah. He's kind of failing to put those away, and as Gorst said, he'll dust himself down because he sadly he's been in this position before where he's had big misses and stuff. But it's just now you hope that if he can get a few goals in midweek against Toulouse and a few at Brentford, then he's maybe going into that City game in a better frame of mind, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Gorst said, I don't want to criticise him too much because he was one of the only players who looked like making anything happen yesterday, and he does deserve credit for that. But I think, as you say, Liverpool probably back themselves in a lot of games now that even if they have a poor first half, that they'll come out in the second half stronger and they'll always come up with a goal. And I think yesterday proved that, ultimately, obviously they get the equaliser through Diaz, but as you say, against teams like Luton who are going to sort of try and defend it and hold on for as long as they can, you really do need to put those chances away, don't you? But another player who struggled yesterday was Alexis McAllister, and I feel really sorry for him, to be honest. I'm a big fan of him. I think he's a brilliant player, and I just don't think we're seeing the best of him at all. I think, Endo has obviously had sort of a mixed start to life on Merseyside, but for me, I just think he's a number 6, play him in a number 6 role and play McAllister a bit further forward. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Gorst? What are your thoughts on his performance yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, a bit torn really, because the game against Forest, you can sort of see what the thinking is with McAllister in there. Doesn't have to snap into tackles and win them in a Fabinho type manner or a Javier Mascherano. Very subtle, and it's all about touch and technique and vision, isn't it, with McAllister when he plays in there. And it worked well, I thought, against Forest, but then, a week later, he's getting overrun and he's getting out-fought and out-battled, and it starts to become a little bit of a concern, doesn't it? There was one there where he got booked when short corner gets taken to him and he kind of dawdles on it, loses it, and then he has to take a booking because it's a cynical one. And I think it was him who lost it. Was it him who lost the ball for the goal?
I think it was Simicast. Yeah, was it? Or was it
Can't recall.
I hadn't seen it back. I haven't had a chance to watch match of the day, but it seemed to... I can picture in my head it was McAllister. If it wasn't, then at this point...
It might be Elliot, it might have been Elliot.
Was it Elliot? Okay.
I don't know, just throwing people under the bus at this stage.
Yeah. Well, I'll err on the side of caution then with that one. But generally, I just didn't think it was his day. It's difficult because he's playing out of position, isn't it? And I think, even Klopp will concede privately that they still need a world-class defensive midfielder, and the fact that they went after Moises Caicedo probably reveals as much, and the fact that Endo was a little bit of a stopgap, short cut price signing, tells you as much as well. So there is evidence that Liverpool do think that as well. But until then, it looks like McAllister is going to be this number 6, and my big concern is that Manchester City game in November. Well, when is it? 23rd of November? Is it 25th? As I think McAllister as a lone 6 against City, even without Kevin De Bruyne, will be a difficult day for Liverpool to get something out of that one. Maybe you could bring Endo in for it. Maybe you'll go with 2 in there. I'm not sure, but I just wonder how long it's going to last as an experiment, because I can see little bits of it, of what they're working towards, but then I can see a lot more that isn't really working.
I think as well in the Premier League, sort of playing away from home is a different proposition, isn't it, regardless of who you're playing against. And I think having him, as you say, as a lone 6 away from home regardless of whether it's, a top of the table side or sort of relegation fodder. I just don't think that really
Especially
works.
against a side like Luton, who are probably going to be fighting on scrapping on second balls, and you're going to have to get people around him and help him out. But it's interesting, as you say, Gorst. I think for that City game, and funny enough, I've thought it since, probably since September after the Wolves game. I think he'll do the 4-2-3-1 at City, and I think he'll do Szoboszlai and Jones just to get. Obviously, Jones's ball retention is really good, and I think that's, it's a difficult task to keep the ball against City, so I think that'll be really important. And also, Szoboszlai, just his athleticism, I think he'll probably sacrifice McAllister for that one, because he did it when he hooked him at Wolves, he went to the 4-2-3-1, I think, didn't he, for the second half, and they just looked so much better there, and it was kind of chalk and cheese with McAllister in the first half getting overrun, kind of everything that yesterday was, and then the second half there was a lot more control and kind of stamped their authority on the game and were able to play. And I kind of thought that over the kind of the 6-8 weeks since that in the big games, because I think that is a concern for McAllister. When you are playing away from home, when you are going to Old Trafford in April, potentially with top 4 on the line, or if you're in a title challenge or whatever, you do need to go and kind of assert your dominance. So I think he could do that, but I think against Forest and those kind of sides it will work, because he almost is given license to be more free, isn't he? Because Liverpool push higher up the field, and he's almost an extra number 8 as opposed to a lone number 6, isn't he? So as you say, last week against Forest, he wins the ball back and drives it up the pitch, and then I think that sort of first goal plays through Salah, doesn't he? And then Salah plays it onto Szoboszlai or whatever. But it feels like, as Gorst said, it is very much a stopgap solution at this point. But I don't think it's any fault of McAllister, because he's kind of doing. We saw how long it took Fabinho to adapt to that role, and when Liverpool did get that role right, it kind of led to all the success. So it just it shows how important it is. But the flip side of that is, there's, as we've said so many times on this pod in recent months, there's such a lack of good number 6s or world-class number 6s out there who are available. I mean, there's Rodri, Declan Rice. I mean, Caicedo previously, I think, the ground running at Chelsea, and after that, you're hoping to buy potential, aren't you? Like your Lavias and those kind of players. So it's kind of a sticky situation. So it'll be interesting to see if Liverpool do address it in January, or they do kind of persist with what they've got.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the one sort of semi-positive is that he actually picked up a 5th booking of the season yesterday, so he'll miss that game next week against Brentford, but he will be available for City as an option, regardless of whether Klopp opts to play him or not. One thing I will just say, obviously, he picked up that booking from a short corner, didn't he? And I said to you earlier, I just can't abide short corners. I just think, you whip it in the box, you've got a chance of scoring directly, it could hit someone's hand, it could deflect in.
Get a penalty these days for anything.
I just hate it, and I'm putting on record that I'm bad because I hate them.
Got to say that down the barrel.
Well, some as well with Liverpool are at set pieces, Van Dijk goes forward, can I say?
Szoboszlai as well, he's not taking them.
That was a baffling one, that.
Yeah. Another sort of player who struggled a little bit was Joe Gomez, starting at left back, and maybe another experiment that didn't really work out. I mean, I think it was the first time since 2018 Gomez had started at left back, and I did think when I saw the team, it doesn't spell good news for Tsimikas, really, does it? I mean, you would like to think that he would come straight into the team as sort of a like-for-like replacement for Andy Robertson, but I think even after that injury to Robertson the other week, Jurgen Klopp made a point of saying, Gomez can play there as well, and we've got these young players, which at the time I thought that's not really a vote of confidence in Tsimikas. Obviously signed a new deal in September, and then came on and had a sort of questionable cameo at the end, didn't he, really, Tsimikas? I mean, what do you think about that sort of left-back debate? Who do you think is the best person to play in there while Robbo's out?
Yeah, I'm surprised to see Gomez there, because when I think of Gomez at left back, I just think of those very early Brendan Rodgers days for like 3-4 games, and he did well at the time, but that was years and years ago. He's not a natural right back, so he's certainly not a natural left back. So difficult for him, but I can see the thinking in terms of Liverpool shifting into a back 3 and Trent going forward and doing what he does a little bit more. I think Gomez would be better suited to that than Tsimikas, but if it's a back 4 in a traditional sense, Tsimikas is obviously your man. But the problem is, Robertson's going to be injured until January at the earliest, so Liverpool are playing a lot of games in that time, and you can't expect Tsimikas to play every game, because if he pulls up with something, then Liverpool really are in the mire, and it's not an ideal situation, is it? So I could maybe see Klopp thinking, well, maybe we can get away with, in inverted commas, Gomez at left back for this one, and maybe even for Toulouse on Thursday.
especially with Townsend cutting in yesterday. I think that was probably behind his thinking as well, wasn't it? And,
yeah.
You know, the two lads on wide for Luton, I can't remember the lad's name on their left. But
Ben, I thought he had the...
Gave Trent a decent go, and clearly that was part of their kind of blueprint to get the ball out wide and isolate the fullbacks. And, you know, probably, you know, Gomez, who's a bit more defensively minded than Tsimikas, who's, you know, but probably lacks the final ball that Tsimikas has at times. So
but there was no width, was there?
No.
Certainly
especially when Trent comes inside as well, you lose it altogether, don't you?
So it's an awkward one, really, but it's what Liverpool are having to deal with, essentially, with Robertson out injured. And I can see the wisdom of not running Tsimikas into the ground. That's why I'm surprised he started on Wednesday night, to be honest. But I think maybe Liverpool just thought they could get by without him, really, and obviously it didn't quite work out like that.
Yeah, I mean, we said on the pod last week that, you know, Liverpool, do they need to bring in another defender with Jarell Quansah's sort of rise this season? And I think maybe yesterday showed that bringing in sort of a left-sided defender who could be versatile and maybe play left-back as well is maybe the way forward. But we've been quite negative so far today, so we'll go to a positive, and that's Luis Diaz. Obviously, incredibly brave of him to make himself available for selection yesterday, and he comes on and gets his just reward, and he reveals a message on his shirt which said "Freedom for Papa," which obviously then he released a powerful statement after the game, begging to the kidnappers of his father to release him immediately and end this painful wait. Obviously, a hugely emotionally charged moment yesterday. Keifer, I mean, what a hero he is for coming on and doing what he did in these circumstances.
Absolutely. I mean, let alone scoring, just for making himself available. And I mean, you know, you can't even put into words. I mean, we'd have no experience of what he's been through. I mean, it just defies belief, doesn't it, really? And, you know, I suppose the good part of that is that I think this week has really highlighted the kind of camaraderie that there is at Liverpool. And I know you mentioned it in your verdict yesterday, and you go see kind of the South American contingent and how they all went to him at the final whistle, and they kind of looked after him, and obviously they are close-knit off the field as well. But yeah, I mean, you kind of run out of things to say. I mean, what do you say? I think Klopp said that a few times. I mean, you know, as a football manager, he can only say so much, and he's never had to deal with a situation like that before. I don't think anyone in football probably has. But yeah, it was just good to I suppose from his personal point of view, it does sound like, you know, negotiations are ongoing. So hopefully, you know, that'll be resolved soon. And for him just to get kind of back on the pitch and kind of take his mind off it, I'm sure he would have appreciated that as well. Just to kind of, you know, can imagine it being emotionally draining as well, if not physically draining from having, you know, no sleep. So to kind of get out there and, you know, resume training as he did earlier in the week, and as I say, score such a memorable goal, and one that I'm sure will become iconic now, you know, if it hasn't already been broadcast across the globe millions of times. So yeah, just really pleased for him. It was obviously, as I say, a bit of a disappointing afternoon for Liverpool yesterday, but I think everyone, you know, regardless of who you support, can, you know, kind of put your allegiances to one side and just say that it was a really like beautiful Premier League moment.
Yeah, I think all this is happening at such a strange time for Diaz and his family as well, because his partner's pregnant at the moment, so that's got its own stresses and strains, you know, when your family life is normal and balanced. And also it was their daughter's second birthday as well last week, so they're trying to attempt to celebrate that in some sort of way without the grandfather being there, or, you know, not really knowing what the situation is on the other side of the world. So it's just been such a strange, surreal week for him. I actually asked him to stop and talk when he went past in the mix zone yesterday. I knew he'd say no, but I just thought nothing ventured, nothing gained and all that. And he was polite about it, to be fair. He just had his head bowed, and, you know, he was quite subdued, and he just sort of shook his head as if to say, not today. And I did speak to Van Dijk about it, and he said everyone at the club, everyone in the squad is fully behind him. We support him, any help that we can give him, we will give him that. And it's just such a horrible situation to be in, and we'll support him right through it. And I think you could see that at the end, couldn't you, with everyone going over to him, you know, Allister with a big bear hug, and Endo was one of them, Van Dijk, and Tom Lockyer, to be fair, the Luton captain, he was on the first over there on the scene. Diaz's head has denied him a famous Premier League victory, and, you know, a day he would have cherished for the rest of his career, I'm sure, but some things were more important, so he was basically showing his respect and his admiration for it as well. And you can only say what mental strength from Diaz to, like Keith says, just declare himself available, you know, let alone come off the bench and rescue his team from what would have been an embarrassment, really. So yeah, fair play to him. Hopefully it's a situation that's resolved sooner rather than later, and we're not having to talk about it on Friday's pod. Negotiations are ongoing, we believe, between the Colombian government and the ELN, but the fact that we're even talking about that on a football podcast is just crazy, really.
Yeah, I mean, I did find myself after the game I think we've been a bit spoilt lately, haven't we, with Liverpool? Only one defeat in 28 games, and you get a bit riled up when you have a result go against you like you did yesterday, but then at moments like that really put it into perspective, don't they? So hopefully it will all be resolved very soon. But another positive yesterday, I thought Harvey Elliott, nice little cameo off the bench, and again sets up Diaz for the winner. I mean, Keifer, what did you make of his display yesterday? Because he's not really let Liverpool down this season when called upon, has he?
No, not at all. And he's a player I felt a bit sorry for this season, to be fair, because he's had a few Europa League starts, hasn't he, in the cup as well. But you look at kind of what he achieved last season. I think it was up until the Chelsea game, he played every game and finished with 44 odd appearances overall competitions, and only 19, 20 kind of age. And you think he made huge steps. And then this season, because of how much money he's been spent on this kind of restructuring of the midfield, he's kind of found himself playing a bit of a bit part role, and he has become that kind of designated first sub, hasn't he, on 60, 65. But his impact in so many games this season has been there, and he's so young and he's so vibrant, and he really does kind of give the team something, when they kind of need that just bit of impetus to do something different or kind of be a bit braver in possession. He kind of brings that, and we saw that in the victory over Wolves in September when he comes on and kind of how Liverpool kind of seize control of the game, and yesterday as well. I mean, the ball is absolutely brilliant. As I say, all the plaudits will go to Diaz, and rightly so, for the header and everything that he's been through. But I've not seen a lot of people talk about the assist from Harvey Elliott. I mean, the vision and the audacity to try it is one thing, but to execute it is brilliant. To put it between the kind of last defender and the goalkeeper in that kind of corridor of uncertainty to call it is brilliant. And as I say, I have felt a bit sorry for him this season, because he should be rewarded with a start for that, but the competition for places at Liverpool, something there probably wasn't at times last season, is rife at the moment. So especially in those kind of two advanced midfield positions. But you'd imagine he'd get a start against Toulouse on Thursday, if not play a significant role, and then hopefully can build from there and kind of push on.
Yeah, I mean, a testament, isn't it, really, Gorsty, to what he's like as a character as well. I mean, it would be easy for him to feel frustrated having played such a large role last season, sort of being relegated to a role on the bench, but, he never seems to sort of let it bother him, never seems to drop his head, and he comes on and puts in a display like that yesterday.
Yeah, I think he's carved out a little bit of a niche for himself now, hasn't he, as someone who can come on and really influence games. He's someone who sees himself growing in responsibility now as well within the group. He's obviously still one of the youngest in there. He's only 20, doesn't turn 21 until April, but given the players who've left, the Milners, the Hendersons, Fabinho, Firmino, even Keifer and Oxlade-Chamberlain, and the players who've come in are quite young themselves, aren't they? Gravenberch is 21, McAllister's 24, Szoboszlai was 23 last week. He sees himself with his experience now as someone who's a little bit of an influential voice within the group, and that seems to be shown in the authority of his performances. He's playing well, to be fair, and he just needs to keep it going and let the manager know that if he's choosing between Gravenberch and Jones for that third midfield slot, that he's as viable option as them two as well. So you'd imagine he will play on Thursday, and he's just got to keep it going.
Absolutely. Well, one thing I do just want to touch on briefly, something that happened sort of away from what was going on the pitch, but more tragedy chanting, which unfortunately seems to be a regular issue now in the Premier League. It was something that I thought Jamie Carragher spoke very well about on commentary. It was something Jurgen Klopp came out to condemn after the game. And it's just so frustrating, isn't it, Gorsty? Because I think so many people treat it as a bit of banter and just sort of part and parcel of going to the football, but it's really damaging, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I got to a stage around about a year ago, actually, where it just felt like it was happening every game, and you was banging your head against the wall, and you were just saying the same things every week. And then I didn't really notice it much since then, but you couldn't really fail to miss it yesterday, clear as day. Where we were sitting, actually, we were basically in with the home fans, and you couldn't miss it. It was surrounded by it, and there was someone who was sitting next to me. I'd never met him, actually. I don't know who he was working for, but I think he heard my accent, and he knew I was from Liverpool, and he just sort of turned to look at me to see my reaction of feed the Scousers, and then obviously the Hillsborough related stuff, and all I could do was just say, it's horrendous that this just keeps happening, and it's one of them now where people come out and condemn it every time it happens, and it just carries on happening. Now, if people are kind of unaware as to what it means, then you could maybe say, fair enough, it happened once, now it's taken as a slur against the 97 victims of Hillsborough, leave it at that. say no more, never ever mention it again, and you reasonably expect people to say, okay, fair enough. In the same way, any kind of discriminatory chant, if people are unaware of what it meant, and then they find out what it meant, and then it ends good. But people try to argue the toss. People try to say that it's not about Hillsborough and this, that, and the other. And if the Hillsborough families are saying it is, then why can't they just be listened to and it just cease to exist? That doesn't seem to be the case. It's just too easy now for that chant to be thrown out against Liverpool fans, and it's just sad that it keeps happening. And I haven't actually heard what Carragher said, because I was obviously at the game and haven't had the chance to kind of digest much coverage of it other than our own, but I believe he was very well spoken on it, and good on him for saying that. And I think we've got a responsibility to call it out on the likes of these podcasts and in our coverage and that type of stuff. So good on Carragher for that, and let's hope we don't have to in the future, but evidence says that we will, sadly.
I think it's sad because it's become so commonplace, hasn't it, in football, and it's kind of like social media, isn't it, of like that mob mentality of, well, I'm in a crowd full of people, of another 600 people are sat around me, they're all doing it, so it must be acceptable, and it isn't. And I suppose now it's like, as Gorst says, what course of action do you take? Because not only have they been told by the club or the authorities or whatever, but the actual people who these chants are affecting and causing serious harm to every time they hear it on the telly or hear it in away ends. They're hearing it from the horse's mouth, and if that isn't enough to stop them or enough to discourage them from doing it again, well, what is a fine? Well, that's not going to solve anything. It is just really sad, and it's just the thing that for me was that, like, last year there was a bit with City, wasn't there? Well, there has been over the last couple of years. It kind of that rivalry with City has intensified, and kind of City have sung that, whether they come to Anfield or Liverpool go to the Etihad. But I was just thinking, what business have Luton got in that? I think that just shows how commonplace it's become, because this isn't two teams going for the title or big rivals on and off the field. It's a team Liverpool haven't played for the best part of 15 years, and it's their big day on Sky Sports kind of thing, and their biggest game of the season so far will be one of their biggest games of the Premier League season, and they're kind of ruining it with that. And it's just like, it's just not a good look, and it leaves a really sour taste, because on an afternoon that should have been, we should be talking about other things, Luis Diaz's heroics and Luton's performance, doing really well. We're talking about this again, which, as Gorst says, we'll probably be doing 2 or 3 times before the season's out again, no doubt. So it is just a real shame, and it, as he said, it really does need to stop.
I remember when Liverpool played Norwich on the first game of the 21-22 season, Billy Gilmour was on loan from Chelsea at the time, and there was obviously a derogatory chant aimed at Gilmour because of that. And then Liverpool got Klopp to sit down with Paul Mann from Cop Outs, and he basically explained why the chant was derogatory to a certain group and why it should stop, and then it essentially has since then. And that is kind of the point that I was making just then. If people who are affected by certain chants come out and tell you, look, can you stop chanting this? This is why it's insulting and offensive and whatever else. Then why can't they be listened to? So we'll see. Hopefully it does kind of fade away, but I'm not convinced it will just yet, sadly.
And the thing is with that, those chants that were sang at the time, it feels like now you don't hear them at Anfield because they're self-policed. People know they have a responsibility. They've heard it from the manager, they've heard it from the people it affects, and people have now took that moral decision to, well, I might not think it means that, but the person who, who's at the centre of it feels, deeply offended by it. So if they don't like it, I'm not going to sing it. And it feels like now, I go to a lot of Liverpool games, and I don't think I've heard that probably since then. And that's a credit to Liverpool fans for listening, and also kind of the social responsibility of people who do go to the games have been like, you don't sing that, mate, or that's not on kind of thing. But clearly that effect isn't trickling down the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I think Liverpool fans know, don't they, the impact that derogatory chants like that can have, and maybe that's why they've been sort of leaders in stamping out those sorts of chants within their own ranks. I mean, I remember going to a Villa game. I think it was the game that Mane scored the late winner a couple of years back, and coming out of the stadium and minding my own business, and a grown man got in my face and started shouting sort of derogatory chants, and the sort of the level of vitriol and stuff that is sort of swept aside as banter and things like that is absolutely disgusting. And as Gorst said, all we can do is sort of bang the drum and try and raise awareness of that as much as we possibly can, and hopefully we'll get to a point where we're not talking about it anymore. But yeah, just moving on, as I say, Keifer spoke really well about that on Sky, but he then went on after sort of it in the analysis of the game to sort of reflect on what the impact the game could have on Liverpool's title chances, and he went as far as saying, everyone knows Liverpool aren't title challengers this season, and I thought that was a bit harsh, really. I think, we're still sort of at the stage of the season where we're still learning about this Liverpool side, and we don't fully know what they can achieve this season. Yeah. But when you consider, obviously frustrating result yesterday, but they're still only 3 points off the top of the league, albeit with Tottenham to play against Chelsea tonight. But do you still think there's a chance that this Liverpool side could fashion an opportunistic title challenge?
Yeah, I mean, City are obviously the favourites for reasons that, when we look over the last 5 years, the last 10 years, they're the team to beat, aren't they? But I wouldn't necessarily say Liverpool can't challenge at all. Do we consider Arsenal as challengers? Did Arsenal challenge last season? It all depends on how you define that challenge, doesn't it? Liverpool taking City to within the last 15 minutes of seasons. Now that is a challenge, isn't it? They're proper challenges. So it all depends on how you define it, I guess. I'll put it this way, I don't think Liverpool are going to finish lower than third this season. Now, does that mean that they'll be challengers? We'll find out, I guess. So, yeah, I think, like you say, we are just learning about what this Liverpool team are capable of. Maybe some bad habits that they need to shake off after last season. But it's all fresh and new, isn't it? And I think one of the things they do need to learn fast is to not be dropping silly points like to teams who are in the relegation zone.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we move on to Toulouse, which obviously Liverpool travel there on Thursday, I just want to give a quick mention to the women's team who actually beat Leicester City 2-1 yesterday. And that means that 3 wins from 5 out of their opening 5 games of the season. They drew 1 as well, so they're third in the league on 10 points, so they could be mounting a cheeky little title challenge of their own this season.
If they stop playing Everton and Anfield, they might have a chance.
But yeah, I think it's just worth noting that obviously they play at Prenton Park, and obviously yesterday, if fans were down at Luton, they wouldn't have been able to make it for the women's game. But if fans are around and the women are playing at Prenton Park, then get down and give them some support, because I think they've been excellent this season, and great to see them getting another 3 points on the board yesterday. But we will move on now to Thursday. So Liverpool play Toulouse in the Europa League. They only need 2 points to guarantee qualification. Keifer, what sort of game are you expecting on Thursday? Do you think Liverpool will be fired up and wanting to bounce back after that at Luton?
Yeah, absolutely. And even if they are to make wholesale changes, which I think we all probably expect, they've shown this season numerous times that they've got the quality to kind of dispatch opposition, especially in the Europa League, what they did last time to Toulouse at Anfield. So that's kind of the aim, isn't it, to get a few goals, keep a clean sheet and secure qualification. I think, there's obviously they'll want to go far in the Europa League, but I think there's a greater incentive this year with the team who finishes first in the group getting a bye to the last 16. So, that avoids Liverpool 2 games in February, March time, which, if they are going to, be challenging on other fronts, whether it be the League Cup, the FA Cup and the Premier League, I'm sure, 2 spare game weeks or midweek games, spared on the calendar will be greatly appreciated by Klopp. So absolutely, I mean, they've kind of taken this Europa League group lightly. I mean, Gorst, you were saying before that we haven't even really paid much attention to anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound bad, but I couldn't really tell you how the other 3 have been getting on amongst each other. It's almost like Liverpool are getting their business done, and they won't have to worry too much about anything else.
Absolutely. I mean, they've made light work of the group so far, and people probably look at it and think it's the Europa League, it's second rate, but I mean, United and teams like that have struggled in the past, so you can only kind of beat what's ahead of you, and as I say, if they kind of put themselves in good stead with qualification, then they'll be in the round of 16, and then that's, I think, when the competition starts to get serious. When you get the kind of the Champions League knockouts, and you'll get the big kind of spring nights at Anfield, and I think people maybe start to appreciate the Europa League a slightly bit more, myself included. But yeah, as opposed to Thursday, I'd expect numerous changes. Might see one of the young fullbacks come in. Ben Doak maybe get a run out after a few weeks out. The likes of Harvey Elliott come in, and then just all about getting the job done really, and hopefully in kind of double quick time, so they can make a few changes ahead of ahead of Sunday against Brentford.
And as Keifer said there, Gorst, it's a good chance, isn't it, for Klopp to sort of assess his squad, particularly after a defeat, not a defeat, felt like a defeat yesterday. A draw
it was
yesterday.
a defeat. Draws are no good for Liverpool.
After yesterday's result, it gives Klopp a chance to sort of assess his squad, doesn't it?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what he does at left back. Obviously, Luke Chambers played against Toulouse, didn't he? As you say, we don't want to run Simicast into the ground. Endo is a pretty nail-on staple fixture of the Europa League, isn't he? Cody Gakpo might start.
McAllister will now, won't he, after?
Yeah, you'd expect McAllister to start. Maybe Jones or Elliot, possibly Elliot.
What was wrong with Jones yesterday?
Just a minor knock, apparently, but I mean, Liverpool will tell you the players got minor knocks all the time and they're off for a while. So, I mean, hopefully he spotted in training this week. We'll find out, won't we? But yeah, maybe a chance for Cody Gakpo to get a bit of momentum. Diaz, does he start now? Maybe even Mendo. Lots of options for Klopp, and it's quite nice that Liverpool aren't, they don't have to go full big guns, did they, for this one? They can probably qualify without getting out of second gear, and that's pretty much what we're expecting at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously be sort of doing a deep dive into that game on Friday and looking ahead to Brentford at the weekend. But just sort of as an overview, Keifer, I mean, it's a big week for Liverpool in terms of you want them to have a couple of strong performances, don't you, to sign off for the international break.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing worse than dropping points before an international break, and I can't tell you the last time. Oh, Brighton, that was it, wasn't it? And that kind of international break felt
the most recent one.
Yeah, but it felt you just kind of dragged on for ages, didn't it? Yeah. And there's nothing worse than the international break, even when you've had a win. So to kind of sign off when you've not had a win is the worst. So they've made good habits, haven't they, Liverpool, so far? These kind of Sunday afternoon kickoffs. They had the one against Villa in early September. They had the one against Forest last week, and they kind of compare that with Forest's trip to Anfield in April. I think it was when they kind of made a dog's ear of it, didn't they? I think it was 3-2, kind of late goals. That's the blueprint now, isn't it? You make loads of changes on a Thursday, and then on a Sunday you turn up to Anfield, and you get the job done. And then I think with the amount of rotation and the options in the squad, you can still feel two really strong sides. So that's what Liverpool will be about this week. And then it's all eyes on that game at City, isn't it? It kind of feels like the later we get into this pod, we just keep edging the games, don't we? Looking forward to Thursday, looking forward to Saturday, looking forward to City. But that's it, isn't it? It's a big week for Liverpool, just in terms of kind of getting back on track and kind of remembering who they are, I think. Yeah,
we'll make you do your team predictions, because it's quite hard to guess who's going to be starting for Liverpool. But score prediction, Gorsty?
Yeah, I mean, the 5-1 was the biggest result of the season, wasn't it? Toulouse didn't cause Liverpool too many problems. I can see it being another comfortable night, 2-0 maybe, in Liverpool through.
I go 2-1. I always predict wins, and they always win, so I don't think I've ever got the score right, but 2-1 just feels like the safest bet with the amount of changes there probably could be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Gorsty went 2-0 for his prediction for yesterday, so hopefully it doesn't prove to be a bad omen on Thursday.
Like Mark Lawrence, one of you three called him.
Liverpool invincible for 5 years straight.
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully Liverpool will return to winning ways against Toulouse on Thursday. We'll be back later in the week, but thank you for joining us for the latest episode of the Blood Red podcast.